Boundless Authenticity Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Boundless Authenticity. My guest tonight is Sev Tok, radio host, ET experiencer, speaker, ex-MUFON state director, and author of You Have the Right to Talk to Aliens. You can find more about and contact Sev at planetsev.com. I have to say that I really enjoyed talking to Sev. She was so nice and so easy to talk to. I'm looking forward to having her back on the show soon to share stories about ET contact with us. What inspired you to write your book?
Mm. The night before, when I went to bed, I had no idea of writing a book. In fact, there was no way I was going to write a book because I was too afraid to come out. I didn't want my clients to know that I'm talking to ETs. I didn't want my friends to know. But when I woke up that morning, I declared I'm writing a book. And I'm going to call it You Have the Right to Talk to Aliens, and I'm coming out. And I have no idea what happened that night, but something transformed me. And what started it was a talk I had with Kathleen Martin. After I got the second X on my back, I got so freaked out. I had what I call an existential crisis. And I needed help. And so I reached out to Kathleen Martin, and she spent a lot of time with me, and she validated a lot. She's a huge help. And today she's a friend and a mentor, and she endorsed my book. So that started my process of actually accepting what's been happening to me since I was a little girl, because I was in denial. I was in complete denial until just shortly before writing that book.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, a second X on your back as if one wasn't bad enough. So, I mean, how does that feel? Just waking up and knowing that something has happened that isn't earthly. Like, how do you get through something like that?
Yeah. Well, the X, let me show you. There's the first X. That was the first X on the left cheek of my tush. And then the second X was about 9 days later on the right cheek of my tush, exactly across from each other, looking the same.
You sure this was ETs and not ZZ Top or something?
No one's come up with that one before. Well, I saw a gray. That's why I tend to think it's ETs. It was standing right behind me, and I felt like I was paralyzed on this hospital bed in this room I didn't recognize, and I couldn't move my arms, couldn't move my legs, but I felt something standing behind me, and I could move my neck. So I went like this, and then right here was a gray, just staring right at me, doing something to my back, and we locked eyes. And I describe it in the book as looking into two pools of black oil. And what really scared me, here's a drawing I made of it. What really scared me was the lack of telepathic communication, because I'd been in contact with them before and there was always communication. This time it was nothing. And that really scared me, because it just made it feel robotic and cold, and I got really scared. Turned my head back around, and ding, I'm in my bedroom, and I'm about to discover the second X. The first X was a lot to deal with, but I decided that my partner and I were just going to ignore it. I told him just ignore it. And he's looking at me like, what? I'm like, this is my MO since I was a little girl. Ignore everything. Ignore all the shapes, the weird things on my body. Ignore all the lights in the hallway in the middle of the night. Ignore the things that I could feel touching me. Ignore everything. But then the second X that I couldn't ignore. And when he showed me the picture of it, I call it an existential crisis because it felt like my reality was just ripped right out from underneath me. Because in that moment, first of all, I was so fearful of the grays. I intuitively knew it was the grays. Well, he showed up behind me, but with the first X, I intuitively knew it was the Greys. With the second X, I actually saw them behind me. And I just didn't know what was real anymore. I had to admit that my decades of ET contact was real. That was a lot because I just thought it was dreams. And then I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was doing talking to ETs in the middle of the night. What did they want with me? I didn't know who we were as a human race. Like I knew nothing. It was like I started all over again. And it was a really very scary place to be.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I want to ask you so many questions. I usually have a lot of questions. I've been trying to pick the best one. Um, I mean, has it only been Grays or has it been others?
So my first conscious memories are from the age 10. And from 10 to 12, I was visited many times by a being that would come in a spaceship. So in the middle of the night, I would find myself outside standing in the grass, and the spaceship would come. And each time it came from a different direction. And I'd be so happy because it was like I was seeing a relative. And it would come and hover over my head, and it was so big that I couldn't see the sky. It would land, and a door would open, stairs would descend, and this being would come down. And I've drawn a picture of the being, but I don't have it handy. And it's more human than not. It's a male with dark hair, dark clothes. The only difference I remember was that his ears were just slightly elongated, but they were not like Spock, and I wasn't into Star Trek then. And he was just checking up on me. He was just making sure I was okay. And so there were so many of these visits. And each time I would ding, come to in my room. That's what it feels like. It's like you're dropped from another reality into this one, fully alert. There's no grogginess, no sleepiness, no nothing. You're just ding, awake. And as a kid, I would be really confused because being with that space brother felt more real than being in my room. Being in my room felt fake, but being with my space brother was real. And then I would just tell myself, just have to forget about it and get dressed and go to fifth grade and just try and be normal. And I didn't tell anybody. I could have told my parents because they were believers, but I didn't. I hid it for decades. So I don't know what we would call that being, human looking with dark hair, like in a unitor dark outfit. And also the Greys, and also what I call the light beings that came in the middle of the day in my living room and gave me information about our DNA and activating our DNA, about Tesla and Disney and Tchaikovsky. And they were very, very loving, intense amount of love. And I also saw, are you familiar with Chris Bledsoe? Chris Bledsoe is a well-known experiencer who just lives a couple of hours from me. And I saw the same beings that he saw as well. They were shorter, kind of looked like a light bulb. And then also these taller light beings and beings that were moving along on all fours. They look like dogs because they were on all fours. And he's the only other person that I heard of have seen something like that. Have you?
No, that's very interesting, and I'm happy that you asked me that question because your story reminds me of one that I have told frequently on this podcast about being very young, about 4 years old, being in my bed, and I would be partially in between sleep and awake. I always used to be looking at a window, which would be like on the left side of me as I fell off to sleep. And I remember very frequently I would just go into this dreamlike state where this, I don't want to really call it a big mothership, but it was a really big craft and you couldn't see it because the light that was coming from it was so bright that it would come down above my house and I would be taken into it. And that would be a peaceful process, almost like the snap of a finger and like nothing. And I would just be transported far away into, I guess, what you would call space, but I wouldn't really see like stars or anything. It would just be a vast emptiness. And it was dark, but I could look through this window and I could feel like somebody was standing behind me. And it was a very peaceful experience. There was no threats, nothing. And that was a recurring dream, so to speak, for me throughout
Mhm.
my entire childhood. Then as I entered my teens, it disappeared. And the very first time I started meditating, within a week, I started having ET experiences where there was actually like a gray sitting in the corner of my room just watching me. And there was no, like you, there was no telepathic communication. It didn't say a word. And I just kind of asked it to leave because I was bothered by it. I was like, what is this that is happening? I'm not really having this right now. So um it's fascinating the overlap because it hasn't happened recently, but I guess a few years into meditating, I would start having dreams again, and there would be lots of like ET in the sky and stuff like that, like just ships, non-threatening, like once again. And I'm not really sure what they were trying to tell me. I do remember very close to when the pandemic happened. I would have those dreams a lot. And I would be shown images of people inside their houses looking scared and panicked and stuff like that. And there'd be like military and stuff like that. And the ETs would be in the sky overhead. And it was very unclear to me as to which, let me say, whose eyes I was looking through while I was witnessing this. Was it me, my inner vision? Were they showing me this? I just really wasn't clear on it. So it went away after a while. And I guess when the pandemic happened, I wasn't surprised too much by it. I kind of went, okay, that's what that was about. But apart from having any precognitive dreams or anything like that, recently, nothing, no contact recently.
Wow. Okay, you just said a lot. I have a lot of questions for you. Going back to uh, this experience that you had just as COVID was beginning, were you aware of COVID when you had this experience? Where you saw people scared in their homes and you said you saw a military aspect to it?
Okay, so this was happening before anything was announced that there was a pandemic and that there was a virus or anything.
Uh-huh.
And then when the virus did happen, then I was like, okay, well, now I know what those dreams were about, but why, you know?
This is very interesting because there's an experiencer here in North Carolina. She said several contacts, and in one of them, she was shown humans in masks, and she was told that they're very fearful, and that COVID has been created to amplify and increase their fear.
That is very, very interesting. See, I didn't get all of that, but I guess being new to the game and not really knowing what those things meant, because I've my entire life I've always just had a tough relationship with sleep, where I would go to sleep and I would just be in dreamland having all these other experiences and I wake up tired because I spent the whole night having adventures, right? So to me, dreaming and having wild dreams was normal. So
Mm-hmm.
naturally, when that started happening, I was like, well, this is probably like nothing else, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I wonder if our upbringing has something to do with it too. And for instance, well, I don't want to judge what's going on with kids these days, but kids these days are kept really busy, and they really don't have time much to imagine for their imagination and for their creativity to grow, and to just sit in the grass and look at the clouds. And these are important moments for a child, and it could also be in these moments where we connect with the higher realms in these moments. Not so much when they're on a soccer field, but when they're relaxing and connecting with their hearts and their minds, or little kids doing this. But for the kids who are, which I did, and probably you did too, I wonder if that's why we made contact, or vice versa. Because we made contact, we tended to be very introspective kids.
I would agree with you. I've always had a vendetta against the television, so it's never really been something that I was interested in doing a lot of. I was always drawing or trying to invent things. I wanted to be an inventor when I was a little kid.
Oh,
Or I picked up music at 10 years old and
yeah, me too.
yeah. So you know how that goes. Like you just want to
Interesting.
spend time doing that and that opens up your subconscious mind to other things if you're paying attention and you
Yeah,
start to realize that there's more.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a bird?
Yes, there's birds in here. There's
There's
two white
multiple birds.
doves. Yeah, two white doves and the third one's a little brown dove.
Are they all in the same cage?
Yeah.
Okay, I can just see one. I couldn't tell where it was. All right,
Yeah.
good. How come they're not making noise?
They're probably getting ready to sleep.
So you know about Tesla and his love for the dove or pigeon? It was a pigeon. You know the Tesla
No,
pigeon
I don't
story?
know that story, no.
Oh, I love this story. People make fun of him, but I think it just shows you, oh, it ties in with what these light beings that are called the blues told me about Tesla. Uh, so first I'll tell you the pigeon Tesla story. So it is believed, and I think Tesla wrote this down, that he fell in love with a pigeon. And people laugh at that. But to me, that just shows how big your heart can be, that you can actually love a pigeon, actually care for a pigeon. It's not in love like in some kind of sexual romantic way. It was like he absolutely loved this pigeon with all of his heart and respected it and saw it in its grandeur and how beautiful it was. And so to me, this shows a developed mind and a developed heart. So when these light beings, who were absolutely gorgeous and they're impossible to draw, there were two of them, showed up in the middle of my living room in the middle of the day. I actually took my phone, took a picture, but they did not come out in the picture. Uh, they were undulating light, like ribbons of kaleidoscope of light that just kept going like this, moving constantly, of blues and silvers, and sometimes it'd be a little bit of green here. And they had what looked like two eyes and a nose and a mouth, and they were tall. And the first thing they did was to just injected me with so much love. It was it was incredible. I've never felt anything like this. I say it's more than the love you feel from your mother, if you can imagine. And then I looked at one of them and it said, when you look into my eyes, you look into yours. And then from there, all of a sudden, I just was downloaded this information. I was taking notes too at that time. And so uh, Tesla, Disney, Tchaikovsky, three of my favorite men since I was a little girl. Disney and Tesla met, and all three of those men were in connection. They were channeling and they were in connection, whether they admitted it or not. And when you listen to Tchaikovsky music, it's a DNA activator. It helps you align with your purpose. And so it is no accident that Disney's Fantasia is filled with Tchaikovsky music, because Fantasia really is an esoteric movie. It's designed to activate you and align you with your purpose. This is what the blues told me.
That's interesting. It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting what you said about the pigeons as well, because I totally understand that feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had four white doves actually, and two of them passed away. So,
Oh, I'm
you
sorry.
know, these birds they have a lot of different viruses and stuff like that, and it's hard for them even when they're out in the wild to recover from those things. It's just something that they all have to go through. It seems like canker um and all these various different types of sores and flus and stuff. And once they get over it, it's like it's a one-time thing. And I didn't know
Yeah.
that at the time, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Oh,
but
oh.
that's the way it is.
I had an interaction with a wild baby bird. It landed on my finger, and I parked in front of this restaurant, and there's this guy like doing something with a bird, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" I thought he was harming the bird. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, this baby bird is. I'm trying to get this baby bird that fell out of its nest, and there's the mother." And so all of a sudden, that baby bird flew into me and then on my finger and just sat on my finger. Meanwhile, the mother is coming down, swooping
Okay,
on
there
my
we
head.
go.
And actually, I had like scar marks.
So
I was
yeah,
bleeding. And I
wild
carried
animal
this little
stories,
baby
bird
bird across the
stories.
street. And the
I
mother was,
was
the guy took
in
a
my
towel.
yard
He's like
and
covering my head from the mother
there was
bird.
this
And the little girl sat
parakeet,
on my
blue
finger. And we
parakeet,
went across the street and I went
just flew
through
into my
a
yard and
tree
started eating.
and off it went.
And it was
And
eating
that
like
was an amazing
something that grows
experience
on a
for
tree.
me.
I'm really not
It's
sure
like
what it's
touching
called.
wild is
But I came
incredible.
out and I
I
gave it
wish
a
I could say that
banana.
that's crazy,
Put it,
but
just
that's
put it on
happened
the
to me one
wall,
too
and I
many
stepped
times.
back, and it jumped up on the
Really?
wall and it
Wild
started
Yeah.
animals
eating.
on you?
And when
Yep.
it ate the
Yep.
banana, I was like, okay, well, what else can I do for you? And it just kind of looked at me like wide-eyed and hops on the fence and uses its beak and its feet to move over to me. And I was like, okay. So I just picked it up, and I've had that parakeet as a pet for 2 years now.
Oh, that's a wonderful story.
Yeah. It turns out it couldn't fly. It had an injured wing or something. Yeah.
Do you think that it was someone's parakeet?
Well, I live in Barbados, in case you didn't know that. So they fly all around like
Ah,
wild. And what happens is people get them as pets and they escape or they let them go when they can't feed them and
ah,
they just repopulate and stuff like that. Well, they're a tropical bird anyway. They migrate from South America as well. But that's what happens. So there's people getting attacked by African gray parrots and stuff that people have let go that they've reproduced and they're out in the wild and stuff like that. So that's just what happens in the Caribbean.
okay.
Yeah, but the same thing with the white doves I told you about. They just showed up in my yard one day
Oh,
and they looked at me knowingly like, yeah, you're supposed to help me, right? You're the guy, right? And I was like, I guess
yeah.
so. And they hopped on my finger and haven't left.
Yeah, that's happened with one of my cats. We first made eye contact when he was wild. He was the alpha cat in my neighborhood. And we made eye contact and his eyes turned orange. And I'm looking at him and then he ran away and I'm like, did I just see that? Was that real? Or was that like some other multi-dimensional animal? Was that a panther? Because he's all black. Like, what was that? And then shortly right after that, he came and he entered my family. So
Yeah.
there was that little discussion right there with the eyes. Yeah.
There's something about elevated consciousness that magnetizes animals towards you, and you can't get away from it.
They can feel it and they can see it.
Hmm. And if you're like me, you just end up with too many
Lots of
animals, too many pets.
yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit more about the ET thing, of course, because that's what we're here for. What would you say? Because I've had alternate perspectives on the podcast with people who think that they are demons and who think that they are these things that exist in an alternate reality that want to drain our life force and they're just tricking us. I mean, what would you say to somebody like that?
As far as what kind of entities are we going to meet when we go out there looking for contact? Some people think there's a lot of bad or demons out there. Some people think there's just nothing but good. And I just pay attention to frequency. Your personal vibration will determine the type of people and the type of otherworldly beings that you aligned with. So if you have a low vibe, you can see that immediately by your reality, by what you manifest. Low vibe people tend to be jealous and petty and angry, and they don't want to see you succeed. So it's important to keep your vibe high to align with high vibe humans and beings that are very loving and will help you succeed and want to see you fulfilled. So that's one aspect to it. Another aspect is perspective. I used to look at everything through the lens of victimization. I was a great victim I blamed everything on my ex-husbands. They did that to me. I'm not happy because of them. I'm not happy because what he did, what she said, what that. I lived like that for a long time. And so my gray contact happened when I was viewing myself as a victim. So I just naturally assumed that the grays were victimizing me too. But it was actually the grays that helped me realize what I was doing, and I changed my perspective. And I no longer look at my life or look at me through the lens of victimization. And that completely changed my life for the better. And the grays helped me do that. And yes, there are lower frequency beings. I did come in contact with one. It was a couple years ago, a few years, maybe 4 years ago. And I had a friend come spend the night for the first time, and she was a spiritual teacher, and she studied in India, and total believer in ETs. And we go to sleep. I put her in the guest room, which is across from mine. And I'm awakened in the middle of the night because she's getting into my bed. And I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I'm afraid." I said, "Oh, okay." And at that moment, I sensed something at the foot of my bed. And I looked, and right there, just a couple of feet from me at the foot of my bed, was this tall man in black, astral. I call it an astral man in black, blacker than the darkness of the room. It was the middle of the night with the hat and the suit. And as soon as we acknowledged each other, I felt energy come out of it into me, into my chest, and like pulling at me, like just trying to pull me out of me or my essence out of me. Like it had like octopus tentacles and it grabbed me. It was trying to pull me, and it was very scary. And I just demanded, no, no, no. I just would not let go. It was absolutely not. You cannot win. You cannot win. I'm in control. And that worked. But it was like a battle for my life. And afterwards, I went to sleep. And then in the morning, we wake up and I asked her, "Did anything weird happen to you last night?" And she goes, "Oh, yeah." I'm like, "Okay, you go first." She goes, "Well, I was awakened and I look out the window in the guest room. It's right over the water. And I see in the sky Jesus Christ. And I hear this voice in my head that says, we can do this, you know. We can put Jesus Christ in the sky. We can put anything in the sky and make you believe it and think it's real." At the same time, I'm seeing this astral man in black. They're connected. Now, why did that low vibratory being show up in my room? Because it was attached to her, because she had just started the whole QAnon, Hillary and Pizzagate and babies eating and all that kind of, and she fell down deep. And that's a low vibe, that's a negative vibe. And I didn't realize it at the time. But when she left, I realized, oh, okay, you know, we take our peeps with us wherever we go. We never travel alone. And so you can come in contact with a lower vibratory being, even if your vibe is higher. They test you. I mean, if they're around, they might want just out of curiosity, just, hey, are you interested in coming over to the dark side? Yeah.
I agree with you. I tend to stay away from anything that is too negative like that. I mean, we all know that what we call conspiracy theories are rooted in some truth, but not all of it. Like you were just talking about the QAnon thing. That's just a no-no. Let's just stay away from that. That's a weird
No, no.
co-opted cult type thing that people are trying to put your focus over onto more nonsense that doesn't serve you whatsoever to worry about. You know, most things in life, to be honest with you, aren't worth worrying about.
Yes.
And I mean, I just broke my finger and I'm happy as a pig in shit. You know,
Well, it'll heal faster probably because you feel
be-
like that.
yeah, exactly. Like people don't know you can kind of like deny those things as well too. When I say deny those things, I don't mean go into denial, but you can. It's a strange form of acceptance where you can be like, okay, yeah, I just broke my finger, but it's gonna heal if I just don't focus on the fact that it hurts so much, that puts more energy in the subconscious mind to restoring your finger
Yes.
to
Right.
the
Perspective.
blueprint, right? But people just kind of, there's a lot of people that be like, oh, poor me, I just broke my finger, kids that make it better. But you can't be like that, you know? And there's tons of other things out there that I think that right now, with all the turmoil and stuff, people just want to see it as something that's negative to worry about. And those people, this is where I'm going with it, those people are going to have negative entities hanging around them a
Mhm.
lot. And I see
All
it a
around.
lot in my personal life with people. They're like,
Yes.
oh, something spooky is going on in my house. And I don't say anything to them because I don't want to say anything that sounds like judgment to them. But I've met them. I know them. I know how they think, right? I
Mhm.
know where their thoughts are any given moment of the day. And so you're perfect food for
Mhm.
something quote unquote demonic.
Exactly. Food, fear.
Hmm.
Fear. And so there was another time when I came in contact with this devilish type of being, and it belonged to the people who lived in the house before I did. And I just said, I don't have food for you. Like, you have to go. And it's like, no, I'm not going. I said, okay, fine, you can stick around, but you're going to starve because I don't have the food that you need. And you're going to leave anyway. And you have to go off and find someone else to find food from. It's not me. So at first, you just tell it you got to go, and then if it demands it's not going to go, you just know it's going to leave eventually because you can't pacify it if you don't give into it, if you ignore it, detach from it, and then it'll leave. And this, I'd like to talk about this because a lot of people don't know that they have control in these type of situations. They think the otherworldly being has control. And even with people who make ET contact, if it happens often, the experiencer then can get comfortable interacting with the ET and start asking questions. At first, so much is happening, we are not even asking questions. We might not even know we can. There's so much going on in the first couple contact. But after that, I encourage experiencers to start asking questions. And when you do, they answer. And I help experiencers around the world. I'm an experiencer advocate. And from my investigations and from my interviews, I've determined that the ETs are giving humans a lot of information, and it falls primarily into 5 categories: the hybridization program, how to strengthen our psychic abilities, potential future fate of humankind, uh, spiritual information, very profound, important information about uh, personal empowerment, and also information about scientific innovation. And they tend to fall into these 5 categories. This is very important information. And I really like talking about experiencers who change, who go from fear to love. There's a study done by Kathy Martin and others that most experiencers do not want their contact to stop, because once they get over the fear, they realize that they're gaining so much from the experience that they don't want it to end. So having a scary experience usually is what happens in the beginning, but after a while, it's not that scary. There's also famous, very, very famous experiencers like Travis Walton, who he's completely changed his mind. He went from thinking they were horrible and trying to kill him to now thinking they might have saved his life. Terry Lovelace also has had a change in his mind, that they weren't all bad, that they were trying to help him too. And this happens once you start to investigate and go on the personal journey as to what happened and why did this happen and how it can benefit me. You see how beautiful these experiences are and how profoundly they can affect you. And then as we individually transform, we shall collectively transform. The ETs know that they can't have a mass landing. So the best way for a collective transformation is through the individual.
Wow. I don't even want to ask this question, but where can we find you? Because that means the interview's done.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. I have a website, planetsev.com. I also have a planet in a star system named after me in Star Wars. And I have a YouTube channel, Alien Spirit with Sev. And I'm on TV. I'm about to be. Uh, I was in LA a couple months ago filming for the History Channel. It's one of their more popular shows, and I'm not allowed to say which one yet. And also on Gaia TV and Canadian TV. And I speak at conferences, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm really easy to find. And I do soul purpose sessions too. I'm a spiritual counselor.
Okay, that's great. And I did see you with George Newry that time. So,
Oh, you did?
yeah,
You watched Beyond Belief on Gaia?
yeah, I
Thank
did. I
you.
watched that. That was like a year ago, wasn't it?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly a year ago, last week. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well, I have had a good time talking to you,
Oh,
and
I enjoyed
I
it.
will be asking you to return to the show again soon.
Love to.
I feel like I have a lot more questions to ask, and you probably have a lot more stories to share with us. But
Okay.
until then, thanks for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast. And we just want everybody to know you have the right to talk to aliens.